Hey, my internet worked. That's great.
Yay.
It was giving me so many warnings. I was worried it was going to die. We've just had a very long conversation about internet speeds. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 16 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show in which we take you back for a journey through time and take you to examples of utter stupidity and idiocy from history's greatest idiots and give you lessons so that people you can learn from those mistakes and never repeat the mistakes those people performed and made.
Hopefully.
But who are we kidding? We're humans. We like making mistakes. My intro changes every week. It's an example of them. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host, Derek. Derek, how are you doing, my man?
I am doing fantastic.
That's right. You got a new setup over there, haven't you? We've just been talking about this.
Yeah, I got new floating monitors and stand-up-y desk, and like I can raise it up and down. It's cool stuff.
It's the shit of the future, ladies and gentlemen. I swear to God. Like, I'm sitting here with two hand-me-down monitors and the cheapest 1080p webcam I could find. I splurge big on the Rode microphone, but that's because I'm a bit of an audio geek, and this really appealed to me. But I saw Derek sent me a picture of his setup in the week, and I was like, oh, I want that.
I feel like it's like minimalist, but
Yes,
maximized minimalism.
For sure. Like, it's very
That's a thing. I don't know.
No, I get what you mean. Like, you are making the most with like the space that you've kind of created for yourself. So you have a very efficient setup, I would say. You can, like you said, you can raise and lower the desk. You've got everything like within reaching distance. The only thing it's missing is cup holders, essentially.
I know,
and that's
right?
what the desk is for.
It's got a headphone holder though. It's got a hook for
Very
them,
useful.
So
that's so useful. Handy. Like, I have so much shit on my desk that I barely have space to put my headphones on. Right? It's just it's always the thing that gets hung on the corner of the screen.
Yeah,
which I shouldn't do.
Snagged as you walk by.
Yeah, like whenever I have to make a mad dash to my bathroom, it's always the first thing to go flying. Crohn's disease joke. Anyway, it's been a week. We were actually going to record this last weekend, but the UK was going through its 19th heat wave of the year.
Yeah. You guys are getting it this year, man.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, we've just covered the father of climate change denial. And boy, there's no denying it anymore. Anyone out there who's still saying it's not a thing, you're fucking blind. And you have, and like Prince Andrew, you have no ability to sweat, apparently, because boy, has it been hot around here recently. It's funny because last weekend wasn't as hot as it was like a few weeks ago, and I told you like it was 110 degrees here in this country or some stupid shit like that.
That's
the hottest
ridiculous without air conditioning.
And nobody in this country, unless you're working in an office, has air conditioning. And I struggled then, but there was something about last week, and I think it was because by the time we were supposed to record the podcast, it was like the 5th day in a row of like 35-degree weather. And at that point, I was just like, I'd given up basically wearing clothes, of like doing anything other than dipping myself in cold water every day. Like literally just like trying to conserve water, but also having the coldest shower humanly possible. It was hell. So we had the loft open, like just every trick in the book. I even tried to make home air conditioning.
Yeah, with ice in a bucket and a fan.
Yeah. Doesn't fucking work.
Not much. No, I tried that.
I tried it. I splurged. I was like, maybe if we raise the ice up close to the fan so that when the air passes through it, it is air conditioned. And then I was like, well, that's not working so well. Maybe a stronger fan. Maybe more ice at the bottom as well so that it cools it even more. But no, even in my tiny 3rd bedroom / office, which is only 13 foot long, about 7 foot wide, it made no difference.
I found one surefire way to get your homemade air conditioner to work. And that is you get all of the ice and you pack it in there real good. And then you climb your ass into the ice because it's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah. Ice bath is the solution. I don't know. You can turn your oven to cold. Sorry, that's a Simpsons joke.
But I was like, shit, they do that?
Yeah, that's why they Bart and Homer are camped out in front of the fridge with the door open, and Marge and Lisa climb in. They're like, "You shouldn't be doing this, but it's really comfortable in here." And then the fridge dies, and he just turns to Marge and says, "Marge, can you turn the oven to cold?" It's like, that's fucking brilliant. So yeah. Anyway, we didn't want to record then, so we're recording now, and I have a really interesting. It's going to be the first ever team on History's Greatest Idiots, the first ever conglomeration of idiots.
Okay.
And you will see why. There are at least 13 people involved in this team, and 11 of them are complicit in the stupidity.
Oh.
So we will get to that in a bit, and I promise it's sad, hilarious, annoying, frustrating, all in one go. So before we do, Derek, can you tell us who your idiot is, or about your idiot this week, please?
Well, I don't have a team.
Great.
I mean, I guess it was a team effort. This guy is the leader of a team, a super powerful team, and he did just a shitty job at being a leader, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, though. So, when you take like a leadership role, it has a ton of responsibility, and ultimately, everything that everybody does underneath you is your fault. So, as the leader of a high-level organization, you need to be able to quickly and effectively figure out what is vital and important right now to go forward and do a good job.
For sure.
And this guy did not do that. He falls into a category of not good at that job. And when it comes right down to it, he was either ignorant, arrogant, or what's the other one? There's another that he was.
Ignorant, arrogant,
incompetent,
pestilent. No, incompetent. Perfect. I was going through Horsemen of the Apocalypse. But yeah, you were right.
Don't do that. That's scary these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, the guy I have is his name is George Tenet. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he was a pretty big name in American intelligence back in the 2000s-ish.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that name, but you're going to have to fill me in.
We'll get into it. His name's George Tenet. He's born January 5th, 1953 in Flushing, New York, and he's a twin. His fraternal twin, Bill, was also born on that day, but he was second, so he's the older brother.
Right. Okay.
Both of George's parents were Greek immigrants, and his father was a coal miner in France before he came to the U.S. just before the Great Depression. His mother has a cool-ass story about how she got here. She stowed away on a British submarine.
As you do.
Yeah.
We didn't have many of those, so good for her for finding some space in there that wasn't taken up with weapons or Nazi code that they were trying to get back. So
I didn't know that there was space or a whole lot of British submarines, honestly, and I didn't know they were in Greece, but she took off from Epirus, Greece, and they ended up in where everybody ends up, New York.
Of course.
So he's raised in Little Neck, Queens, New York, and he led a pretty standard American life. Him and his brother as a teenager worked as busboys at the family diner, and maybe it would have been better if his brother had been the one that followed his path, but he didn't, because Bill was the more reserved, precise, and studious of the twins, and George was loud, sloppy, boisterous, talked constantly.
Sure.
A mouthpiece is what he was described as.
Isn't that interesting? You've got that kind of variation between the twins who are basically identical.
And, well, I mean, fraternal is they're not identical. But does that mean that you get to split personality traits? I don't know how twinning works. I
don't either. All I know is they're terrifying sometimes. So,
and they sell gum.
They do, and ride similarly sized tiny bikes. That's a Shriners joke. I told a Simpsons joke. I'm telling a Shriners joke. Sorry. I'm going back in time now.
You're on one today, and at least your references make sense, because mine are like just obscure and nonsense. It's great. Anyway, so a friend of George's family would describe him as the type of guy who couldn't keep a secret. Like I said, he was the
What?
mouthpiece. And it's kind of strange for somebody who would later go on to become the director of the CIA.
Yeah. Probably not a great job for someone who couldn't keep their fucking mouth shut.
Yeah, maybe that's just the way he was as a teenager and he got better.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe Quantico flogged that out of him.
Let's see. George attended public school, and he had a keen interest in local and current affairs, and he served as the editor for his school newspaper. Mm-hmm. And one of the local journalists in his area and the host of a local current affairs reporting responded back to what are those editorial opinion letters that George had been sending in, and said, George is the future editorial page editor of the New York Times. So he had potential as a journalist.
That's interesting. And actually, probably a good personality for journalism, because you do need a certain arrogance and
sharing of secrets.
Yeah, like you need to be good at convincing people. That's one of the tenets of the job.
See what you did there.
Yeah.
So he didn't go on to be a journalist, though. He went on to study at the University of New York, Cortland, where he graduated. He then transferred to Georgetown University and went to the School of Foreign Service in 1976 and graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Foreign Service. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I think he made the shift right there.
Yeah, I think could he have been recruited? Maybe.
He did go on to receive a Master of International Affairs at Columbia just a couple of years later. And his first gig after graduation was as the director of the American Hellenic Institute. Goodness, I'm choking on my own saliva. Sorry.
That's okay. So his first job out of university, I mean, obviously, yes, he has, a master's degree and all of that stuff. His first job is as a director. And also the Hellenic thing is interesting because you've obviously got the Greek connection there. So yeah, that's really interesting. Straight out of college, and he's a director. I mean, most people
a research director,
retail or the service industry or something like that. But yeah, he's starting high.
Yes, and then he moves on to solar energy industries, which would have been awesome if he would have just stuck with that and pushed it along further. But he served there as the director of international programs, and he continued that work all the way until 1982, when he started working as an assistant to the Senate. He was a legislative assistant to the senator and later a legislative director, and he began his political career right there, working as a aide to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
Ooh,
God, that was a lot of words.
that was a lot, yeah. Well done.
So from there, his career kind of took off, and in 1995, he was appointed the deputy director of the Central Intelligence Agency after John Deutsch had a hasty and abrupt exit. And now, I got to say, my last name is Deutsch, and he spells his last name wrong. So
there you go. You see, from the horse's mouth, ladies and gentlemen.
As the acting director, we
missed a bit.
I'm using Word again, and I scroll too fast.
Word is so fucked.
I suck at this game. I should know better.
Gates.
Anyway, so George is the director of the CIA, and it becomes official in 1997 after a unanimous confirmation vote by the Senate, probably because he worked for them on the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence. It seems like the next logical step.
Absolutely.
He serves. He normally would be replaced when the administration changed, but he continued on to serve as the director of the CIA through the end of the Clinton administration and into the George W. Bush presidency.
Oh, wow. Not a great time to be in the intelligence game when George W. Bush is coming in.
That's how he got here.
Yeah, that's a fucking conversation right there.
In 1999, George decided to depart from the norms and decline to publish the overall budget for intelligence operations, which included the CIA. And that got him some of his first criticism for lacking government transparency and oversight and information sharing. But he had this plan and desire to reinvigorate the CIA as, like, you know, the spies, the James Bond type stuff. I know that's
right.
British.
Okay, make it more glamorous.
Yeah.
That's a very smart move. You want to recruit people to a clandestine agency like that, make it sexy. It speaks to the people that you want to be spies.
And it's what they needed to do, because recruitment and the budget was down because the Cold War had ended just 10 years earlier here.
Yeah.
So the recruiting had declined, and he stated his mission was to return to the original mission of the agency, which is to prevent another Pearl Harbor.
Oh, that didn't happen.
He almost had it. Just a few short years later, this thing happened.
Yeah, that was probably worse than Pearl Harbor because it was mainland United States, right? And not using any armed forces. Just, yeah, fuck. You failed, my dude.
Pretty much his fault. So anyway, George believes that the greatest danger is from the transformation of Russia and China, and from rogue states like North Korea and Iraq and Iran. And, you know,
to a certain extent, he's right, but he's probably 20 years too early for that.
There's been a pattern in that area for a lot longer than I ever realized.
Oh, yeah.
But his big one he wanted to focus on was the enemy state and them of terrorism. Because,
of course,
why not? That'll get you your budget going. You got a big, scary, ambiguous enemy that looks like us, and you can't see who's where.
Yep. So, you want to make money? You want to get some of that government grant money? Go to war with a vowel. Nothing ever works better than fighting poverty, drugs. Let's see what else. Terrorism. Just pretty much any vowel you can think of vowel, verb. I may have been confused.
Verb. I think no, I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I've completely screwed that up. Anyway, go to war with something you can't defeat, i.e. drugs or terrorism or poverty, and you'll get so much money.
Oh, yeah. That's where the money's at, man.
Yeah.
Fight a war against something that you can't win and can't see.
Something that is truly undefinable. And yeah, you'll get all of the monies. I swear to God.
Yep. So, okay, George takes over. He's the director. He's hiding the budget. He's got the recruiting going good. He's got the new mission of preventing a new Pearl Harbor. And on May 7th, 1999, U.S. bombers struck the Chinese embassy in Serbia during the Kosovo War.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the attack was deemed accidental, but this is George's first screw-up because it was a result of a CIA-led attack campaign.
That's right.
And it was determined that it was an error due to military targeting and database management by the Pentagon. So it wasn't his screw-up, but it was kind of his screw-up.
Yeah.
But so the weapons didn't perform as they were supposed to. The database wasn't correct from the Pentagon, and they missed and blew up the Chinese embassy, which in Serbia. Oops.
Yeah, was not. I mean, unfortunately, because friendly fire incidents have been so high profile over the last, really 50, 60, 70 years, ever since the Second World War, when friendly fire was quite a serious issue at times. I think that, there is a level of acceptance of, there is going to be incompetence in this situation, but there's no doubt that will sour relations a little bit when you attack an embassy. That's bad.
When you make mistakes, rules get made, and as a result of that, and a couple of other incidents that happened in there, there were some systematic changes made to the pre-strike rules of engagement for U.S. pilots, including checklist verifying target information and coordinates.
Right. Smart.
Why was that not part of the... Make sure you're hitting the shit you're supposed to hit. Why was that not in the rules beforehand? But anyway.
No. Sorry. I just want... this moment you say, why wasn't that a rule before? That's common sense, right? I want you to remember this for my thing later on. I want you to remember this exact moment where you're like, this should be the basic go-to system for checking that, but we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, you would think that you would check your coordinates before you throw a fucking giant bomb at something, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
But anyway, China never accepted the United States or their version of events. And Tenet, in a published work that would be in his memoirs, was a prelude to the bombing in Iraq. China had officials contact his agency directly with the exact GPS coordinates of their embassy in Baghdad, just in case. That's serious.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
We don't trust you. You're going to do it again. Here's where we really are. Anyway, about the same time, Al-Qaeda started showing up as a significant terrorist threat, and they claimed responsibility for the 1998 bombings of 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. And that led George to put forward his plan for dealing with Al-Qaeda in 1999. And he selected a new leadership for the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, the Bin Laden unit.
Ah, there we go.
George,
not Bin Laden's he did work for, not those Bin Ladens, the other Bin Ladens, the ones that he didn't like.
Yeah, not the ones that they were friends with and didn't want to disrupt the friendship.
Yeah,
aren't the same Bin Ladens. Well, they're the same Bin Laden. They're
the same Bin Ladens, but they're not the same Bin Ladens. They're the Bin Laden. The Bin Ladens he likes are the ones that pay him to drill holes in the middle of the desert and find nothing. That's the Bin Ladens that George Bush likes. The ones he doesn't like are the ones that show up that he actually has very close ties to those Bin Ladens, and that's not good.
Well, and that was actually one of the things here with George Tenet and George Bush. They were super freaked out about the Saudi connections being brought out after the 9/11 thing, but I'll get into that.
Yeah.
So Tenet decides him and the CIA are going to take all of their financial resources and focus on this Bin Laden plan. And they had some modest aspirations that were actually realized. They started to collect really good information and intel on Bin Laden and some of his movements and plans. But when his activity increased real significantly after 99, they really failed to get into his inner circle. And they failed to share the intelligence that they had with people that were really wanting to do something about it.
Yeah, the cross-agency thing was a big problem before, changes were made.
They were on to him, and it was kind of more of, this is where I say arrogance comes into it. Him and his people wanted to handle things a certain way, and the FBI and their people wanted to handle things a certain way. And so they were like, well, then I'm not telling you. And
so stupid.
Then after the September 11th attacks, they really started criticizing George Tenet and his intelligence community for the intelligence failures, preventing the attacks, which they really should have. And I'll be honest with you, I got a lot of this information about those failures from this great drama series that was on the Hulu, I think. The Looming Tower?
Yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Is it good?
It's a great limited series, and it really makes you go, damn.
Yeah, they had it. They knew.
Why do old white men suck so bad?
Yes. Why are we so bad at everything? What is wrong with us?
But it's a great show.
I also, obviously, I remember Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 when it came out, which was huge and very controversial because he got booed at the Oscars for turning it political. It's like, are you fucking kidding? But yeah, he produced a fantastic documentary called Fahrenheit 9/11, which I would recommend you watch. It makes some really interesting points about how Bush was elected, and then how he kind of didn't really care or was really uninterested in the intelligence that people were planning an attack on American soil.
Yeah. So, well, him and his Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, it's fine.
Didn't care.
Go play golf.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, after the September 11th attacks and all of that intelligence sharing failures came out, George was called before the 9/11 Commission to provide testimony, which he did so in what most people would say an inaccurate, misleading, or incorrect way in all kinds of aspects. He just basically was like, "Well, we didn't do it. I didn't know. We got the cable, but it was information only. So no, obviously, we didn't need the information. Nobody read it. Yep, that's how they missed it.
Shocking.
His decision right after that was to immediately increase the size and capability of the CIA's special operations component and started working with the Special Operations Group and Special Activities Division. That actually had scaled back during the Clinton administration.
Yeah.
But following the attack, there's this new push for paramilitary officers and war on terrorism, keep us safe. We got a war that kicks off immediately afterwards in Afghanistan and one for some fucking reason in Iraq 3 or 4 years later.
Yeah. And we were right behind you. Like, oh, really? Ooh, increasing military budgets? Fuck yes. We'll have some of that, please.
Exactly. And it was this dude's intelligence that led us into Iraq, chasing weapons of mass destruction
that didn't exist.
Allegedly don't exist. Wait, no, they proved it. That's right.
So there's an interesting sideline. I've got a couple of interesting sidelines here, actually, but I'll go for the obvious one. My best friend, his childhood friend, was in the military. He kind of ended his career guarding nuclear sites. They have to have like army people on board in case someone tries to blow them up and shit like that. Or if protesters show up, they're like, "Hey, we've got guns!" Oh my god! His first task was on a ship set outside, whatever part of whatever coastline or sea Iraq occupies. I can't remember the name of it. It's got a specific name. Anyway, sat on a ship, kind of running into Iraqi ships that were fleeing because they were getting annihilated. And basically, he was there to pull them over and search for weapons of mass destruction. And they always did. They did the Abu Ghraib shit where they take prisoners with pictures with people while they were handcuffed and sat on the deck and what have you. And it was like we pulled over hundreds of these vessels, and they all had AKs and rocket launchers and shit like that. But I was like, that's not really a weapon of mass destruction. He was like, no, we usually got those anyway. That's just smugglers, more or less. Whereas this time it's just smugglers who are working for the failing Iraqi government. But he was like, not once did we find anything more, intense than a rocket launcher, really. And this is someone who was there for months. So,
as far as I know, they didn't find hardly anything or anything. Actually,
I mean, they found chemical weapons, but they knew he had chemical weapons because he'd used them on his own people.
Well, and he wasn't hiding those. He said they're here. They knew where those were. Those were accounted for, and
exactly. There's
anyway,
no shock. Yeah.
So under George's directorship, the global war on terror comes to light that the CIA is authorizing enhanced interrogation.
Yeah.
They started using waterboarding and other forms of torture during the negotiation of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and a number of other suspected Al-Qaeda members. And in addition to George Tenet's authorization of the enhanced techniques, which came out in a report from investigative journalist Bob Woodward, in case anybody still doesn't believe that they were torturing people. So he said that the enhanced interrogation led to the information that got him the location and surefire evidence that weapons of mass destruction existed in Iraq. And then he used that information in a meeting in December 12th with Bush that there was indeed evidence of weapons of mass destruction that amounted to a slam dunk case.
God.
And after several months of refusing to confirm his statement on under oath, he stated that it was taken out of context and indicated that he made it in pursuant to a discussion about how to convince the American people to support invading Iraq, which is still not any fucking better.
No, it's actually worse.
And yeah, the search following the 2003 invasion by U.S. and British forces yielded no significant weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And September 2002, the Senate Intelligence Committee met with Tenet in a closed-door session where Senator Bob Graham requested national intelligence estimate on Iraq, and Tenet responded by saying, "We've never done a national intelligence estimate on Iraq," which is something that you should do before you.
Yeah, it's kind of your fucking job.
Yeah. Graham insisted that it was one of the most important decisions that they could make as members of Congress, and that the American people are likely to make in the foreseeable future. That's the decision to go in. And we did so with false evidence.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's George Tenet, enhanced interrogations, false evidence for weapons of mass destruction. And I lost my place. Oh, he submitted his resignation to President Bush on June 3rd, 2004, citing personal reasons.
Being shit at his job is pretty personal.
On December 14th, 2004, President George W. Bush awarded George Tenet the Presidential Medal of Freedom, stating that Tenet was one of the first to recognize and address the growing threat to America from radical terrorist networks, except for missing that big attack.
Yeah, except for that part, his fucking job.
So it says that Bush's decision was met with some criticism, but I can confirm that they were like, okay, yeah, Medal of Freedom for, yep. Anyway,
I'm nuts over here.
So George spent 3 years as a distinguished professor following his career as the director of the CIA. He was a professor in the practice of diplomacy and also a senior research associate. In 2005, he left teaching in 2005, and by October of 2006, he's back in the defense business, working in private for a British defense contractor. I think it's Quintek, Quinetiq.
Yeah, that's. I'm not familiar with them. Let's go with Quintek. I guess it. Sorry, did you say QI?
Yes.
Quintek. Okay, yeah. I thought it might have been like some sort of play on quixotic, but it's not. It's just a stupid fucking name. Sorry, please carry on.
So he's working for the private defense contractor. He steps down from the board of them in 2007. And in August 2007, a report's written by a CIA inspector general. It's made public. It was actually written in 2005, but kept classified until August 2007. And in the 19-page summary, it states that Tenet knew of the dangers of Al-Qaeda well before the 2001 attack. And it was his leadership of the CIA that did not do enough to prevent the attacks. And that Tenet personally bears ultimate responsibility for the intelligence community's failure to develop a plan to counter the Al-Qaeda and their leadership.
God damn.
And then following that, in a strange turn of events, George becomes the managing director at an investment bank, Allen and Company, in February of 2008.
That's a shift.
Fuck if I know why. He's
money.
Intelligence. You know what? You want to be a managing director of a bank?
Sure. Whatever.
Seems legit. That doesn't seem like a front at all. The secretive bank did not even announce that he was appointed to that position until February of the following year.
What?
So
they clearly don't have shareholders, because there'd be uproar if they did. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, he also serves on the board for L1 Identity Solutions, which is a biometric identification software manufacturer.
Kind of scary.
Yep. And that's where he's at so far. He's still just making money and doing things.
Wow.
Apparently banking now.
It's kind of crazy how people can just fail at a high level and continue to get very good paying gigs thereafter.
Well, and not even that. I feel like he could be described as an unprosecuted war criminal.
But I mean, yeah,
maybe.
Basically. And also, like, we always go back to this. This fucker does not learn from history. You cannot torture people to get information out of them. It doesn't work. They lie and say whatever the hell they can to get you to stop strapping things to them and pulling things off them and dropping water over them. Which incidentally, when you said waterboarding, my first thought, because Will Ferrell used to do George Bush all the time on SNL and various other stuff. He did a Broadway show called You're Welcome, America. Kind of a fond farewell to George W. Bush's presidency.
Yeah.
And it's a one-man show. I mean, there's a couple of moments where like someone playing Condoleezza Rice comes on stage and does a seductive dance for him. And Will Ferrell's actual real life brother kind of in between. So they obviously need to get him off so they can change the sets and change costumes and stuff like that. So like Will Ferrell's brother is playing like a Secret Service agent who just comes on and randomly starts dancing to techno music.
Oh, okay.
It's the weirdest thing. And there's a part where there's a plant in the audience who starts throwing his shoe. Will Ferrell as George Bush, because that's what happened to George Bush
that's right,
in real life. And the brother who's playing the Secret Service agent drags this guy out of the crowd, and he goes, "Get him out back and waterboard him." And the whole crowd goes, "Oh!" And he goes, "Don't give me that. I've seen it. I've tried it. It's like a spa treatment." And I heard that, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's really dark." You can get there's footage of it. I was going to say you can get a DVD of it. Who watches DVDs anymore?
Dude, I can't even find my DVD player.
I know. I
have one somewhere.
I've still got one. Yeah, but it's really funny. It's just an aside. George Tenet, I swear he made a withering apology speech, or maybe I'm thinking of someone else from the intelligence community in front of like a committee of people.
Oh yeah, yeah, the 9/11 committee. And it was weak. Yeah. It was weak sauce.
Yeah, it was like, I wanted to apologize to the American people, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're still making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Why haven't you retired from public life? You are clearly no good at things.
I mean, he's good at kicking it in his office and not listening to people.
I have no idea how that man... It's the Piers Morgan syndrome, where you fail upwards no matter how bad you do. People keep giving you work, and yeah, you don't understand it. This man was a known failure. He must have been incredibly good at brown nosing, or he must have been very good in interviews. Because how did he get to that position and maintain it after all those failures?
Maybe he was really good at intelligence. You get a good dossier on somebody, you can get a long way.
I would say, yeah, maybe it was a Hoover technique, just like get as much dirt on everyone.
It looked like an Al-Qaeda leader over here.
There's a lot of facial hair going on. But it's fine. It's nicely shaped. But yeah, scoring this guy is going to be really interesting, because we always, one of the weighting elements we put into our scoring is like, well, they didn't kill anyone. But this guy kind of indirectly is responsible for, 9/11. So that's like, it's like 3,500 people, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you got the war in Iraq, which is like 250,000, 300,000 people.
Yeah,
Iraqi civilians and servicemen and combatants and vigilantes and whatever else you've got going on in there. And then you got Afghanistan, which, I mean,
was a shit show.
Yeah, and has now proven to be a complete failure. What was it? Yeah. There's a meme going around that says, was it you who posted the meme that said, America has spent trillions of dollars to replace the Taliban with the Taliban?
Maybe that sounds like something
that might be. I know I shared it. I don't know if I got it from you or someone else, but it's so hard to not score this guy high, because for the basic idiot stuff, he's crap at his job and somehow hangs on to it. We don't know how he's hanging on to it. Maybe it's dirt, like you said. Maybe he's just in with the right people, which nepotism and the buddy system. That's a big failing in pretty much
Yeah.
any governmental structure. But also he is indirectly responsible. I wouldn't say he was directly responsible, maybe indirectly, through incompetence and an inability to understand the fundamentals of his own job, for the deaths of near enough 500,000 people. Give or take. So I think 93 for George Tenet. Yeah, it's such a staggering failure from a historic point of view. And also, we've talked about this before. A lot of the stuff that is going on in this world in terms of people's behaviors, people's frame of mind, people's baseline stress levels, their anger, a lot of this is because we are still living in a post 9/11 world, and the consequences of that moment in time have reverberated throughout popular culture and the kind of the governmental forces that have gone on in the Western world ever since.
Yeah.
And I think that's enough. You can attribute enough of that to this guy to say that he is one of the modern architects of our misery.
Yeah. Dude.
So if this guy had been doing his job, 9/11 wouldn't have happened.
And I feel like a lot of it was just arrogance. He had people giving him the answers on a cheat sheet. Here's what's up. We need to do this or this.
And his inability to act on it.
Yeah. And he's talk to me next week.
Jesus.
I gotta go have bourbon with this guy over here.
Yeah. I'm gonna go hang out with Bush.
Yeah.
No, the one down in Florida, not the idiot in the White House. So yeah, I think 93 is a fair one. Because of the disastrous consequences. That puts him in a category up there with New Jack, who is an actual psychopath, and people like the Planet Killers, like Thomas Midgley and E. Bruce Harrison. These are very serious people from history, and I think George Tenet is definitely up there because he has shaped the modern world through his own incompetence and caused the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. No denying that. So
yep. Yeah. Well, I take that. I think that's a good score for him. And
I feel fair. We may revisit scores from time to time, but I think 93 is fair given his failings in the position. So moving on to a slightly lighter topic.
All right.
I would now like to tell you about my idiots, and it's going to be a relatively short one this week. We may actually have an episode that's less than an hour and 20 minutes. Podcast listeners, I don't know whether you'll be overjoyed about that or upset that you don't get the thing that maybe helps you fall asleep at night. But seriously,
listen to it twice. You'll be all right.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Just put it on repeat. We haven't got any adverts at the moment. No one wants to give us any money. So patreon.com/history's greatest idiots. So my team of idiots this week, and it is a shocking story that I have no idea what they were thinking, but let me introduce you to the Spanish men's Paralympic basketball team from the 2000 Sydney Paralympic Games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I got to see that.
This is taken from a number of articles. I can't credit anyone because it's taken from about 5 different articles, like a paragraph here and there, but it's very easily Googleable, if that's a word.
Googleable.
I would recommend you do it. There's a couple of videos about it as well. So go and watch it. I'll tell you about it now. Okay. Carlos Ribagorda doesn't appear to be a man who suffers from learning difficulties. A journalist for a Spanish business magazine, he's just published a book on young right-wing politicians in the country. 4 years earlier, however, he won a Paralympic gold medal in Sydney as a member of Spain's learning disabled basketball team. A few weeks later, Ribagorda sent his medal back to the Paralympic headquarters in Bonn, Switzerland. He also returned his Spanish team kit and the £150 spending money he'd been given. Fucking hell.
When was this?
This is 2000. That's still not
$150?
$150.
Jeez.
Yeah, fuck that. You're an elite athlete. Here's $150. Go mad. Get yourself all the candy bars in the world.
Oh,
holy shit.
Yeah. Well,
just don't get it. For 4, he explained, he was just one of 10 members of the 12-man squad who had absolutely nothing wrong with them. Yes, that's right. Spain's Paralympic basketball team for the 2000 Sydney Olympics, of the 12 members of the team, 10 of them had absolutely no disability whatsoever and were actually really good basketball players.
Yeah, their only fault was being Spanish, which isn't really anything.
No, that's not a disability. Although apparently in this Olympics it means that you're more likely to cheat because holy shit, he had simply been signed up to boost his country's chances of winning a medal. His revelations shocked the Paralympics, held every 4 years by the city that hosts the full Olympics, shredding its image as the benevolent moment of the international sporting calendar, which it kind of is these days, but man, there's been a lot of doping scandals in the Paralympics and the Special Olympics and all
Has
that.
there been?
Oh shit, yeah, I'll tell you about them now. The shockwaves are still being felt years afterwards because athletes with learning difficulties were banned from competing in the Athens Paralympics, the following Paralympic event, because they just couldn't trust anyone to bring on to do the testing properly. And we'll get to that now. In the Paralympics, just as in the Olympics, people cheat. It was not just the Spanish basketball team that was stuffed with frauds. In Sydney, according to Ribagorda, 2 swimmers on the Spanish team, as well as a table tennis player and at least 1 track and field athlete, were not, as they claimed, learning disabled. He says, the Spanish really want those fucking medals, man.
What are they counting as learning disabled, though?
So we'll get to this. There are very strict criteria, and I will tell you about it. Yes,
ADHD kid on Ritalin on a track team.
I know exactly, but no, there's very strict criteria.
Okay.
Complaints inevitably began to spread. There were 2 or 3 players from both Spain and Russia. The Russians cheated in the Olympics. I'm shocked. Who could have competed in our National Basketball League, complained one Australian coach. What they did with and without the ball was way above what any of our athletes could have achieved. Ribagorda, who helped beat the Russians in the final, agreed. There were 3 players in that Russian team, especially one of them, who were just too good. It's Putin in a wig. That's all it is. It's like send some of the army guys in, just cut the hair more. Ribagorda says he was invited to train in Madrid with the basketball team 5 months before the Sydney Games and saw an opportunity for a journalistic scoop. Smart man, this made his career. There were 5 months of training with not a single disabled person in sight. The 2 genuinely disabled players came from outside of Madrid and were told to train separate from the rest of the team because they couldn't afford to bust them in.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, that's like, we can't. And in many ways, I guess that saved them because they were completely unaware of what was going on because they weren't allowed anywhere near the, clearly not disabled athletes. Some of his new teammates had already been to a world championship in Brazil. Ribagorda himself went to Portugal with the team, but the big prize was Sydney. I think people saw it as a free trip to Australia.
Oh, and $150.
And 100, they go make it, get all the didgeridoo that you want. There we go. Eat all the kangaroo meat you want. There was even some pride in wearing the Spanish team strip. I mean, it's just cloud your judgment enough by wearing the flag. Really? There's a lot of people who were just like, I just want to go to Australia.
Okay. Okay. I mean,
in their first match, the team played too well and were more than 30 points ahead at half time. And they were ordered by their coach to slow down their scoring and let the other team shoot more. It didn't work. They thrashed the opposition team. But their biggest mistake was, it's so messed up, and we will get to that as well. Their biggest mistake was to win gold, part of a haul that put Spain 3rd in the medal table behind the US and Britain, which is that's incredible, for a country with, less funding for Olympic athletes and sports in general, as Spain is. You look at the bigger countries as well.
It's a lower population too, so you have to look at ratio of available players.
Exactly. Yep. And in terms of certain, you can only really train for certain events unless you've got specialist equipment. Whereas, like, one of the reasons Britain does well is because we can train for pretty much any event in this country. There is snow in parts of this country, and there are a lot of lakes and shit like that. And that's far harder to come by in parts of Spain. And it's such a spread out country as well. You've got decentralized issues and training. Anyway, it's a whole thing about the way athletes are funded. But yeah, basically Spain overperformed in the Paralympics. A photo appeared on the front page of the popular Madrid sports daily Marca. I think it's Marca or Marca. I don't know. Rumors began to circulate almost immediately that some players, including the coach of an amateur team, had been recognized as people without learning difficulties. Because when you win a gold medal, people like to take your picture. And when those pictures make their way home and they're splashed over every magazine, newspaper, and website in Spain, people tend to notice this shit. Apparently, one comment section of a very early message board in Spain was like, I know that guy. He's not disabled. And like just thousands of comments like that.
Well, I'm looking forward to where we get to what classifies the disabled thing.
It's the testing is hilarious.
Okay.
They were advised by officials they were advised by Spanish Olympic officials to wear dark masks and hats and grow beards in order to pass a notice that the team's triumphal return. I mean, they're still getting off the fucking plane. Who's not going to spot them? Like, hang on, there's a group of 12 or 13 people over there that we should really be paying more attention to. They appear to be quite tall.
And wearing dark masks.
Yeah. And they don't appear to have any disabilities, but invisible disabilities aside, that's the news was out at this point. Right. Then Ribagorda blew the whistle. Like, they thought they'd gotten away with it. They're like, look, just lie low, nothing's gonna happen. But unfortunately, one of their team was an undercover journalist, so you're fucked, basically. He blew the whistle. The halo of saintliness that accompanies the Paralympics, which started out at Stoke Mandeville Hospital as the International Wheelchair Games in 1948, lost its shine. Stoke Mandeville Hospital is one of the foremost treatment centres for people with kind of various physical disabilities in the UK, and one of the best in Europe. It's also got specialist treatment centres where people get flown to, like if they got bad burns or bad breaks and stuff like that. So it's a very important hospital. Unfortunately, it's only been tied with Jimmy Savile and his antics there. I shouldn't say antics, that diminishes that. But anyway, yeah, we won't talk about that. That's a story for another time.
Okay.
So it was a startling reversal for a £29 million event that Australians had supported with heartwarming enthusiasm, buying 1.2 million tickets. The Paralympics is big business, folks. Yeah.
That's
crazy.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. That's like, I mean, Australia is quite a populous country on the coast anyway, but to get to these parts of the country, you have to take long flights. So for 1.2 million people to be in the vicinity of these games is really, really special. Fingers soon began to point at one of the most powerful men worldwide in the field of disabled sport, Fernando Martín Vicente, a former Madrid city councillor who was a member of the International Paralympic Committee's ruling executive and vice president of Spain's Paralympic Committee. He was also head of one of the 6 international federations of disabled athletes that make up the Paralympic family INASFID. That's INAS-FID, the International Sports Organization for Persons with Intellectual Disability.
Goodness.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on with this guy, but let's give you a little bit of background into Mr. Vicente. In 1975, Vicente, the father of a disabled child, founded the National Association of Special Sports, AND. I don't know how that acronym works, but it's Spanish, dedicated to disabled sports. Every year, it reportedly received huge sums of state cash. While ANDE grew, Vicente's personal wealth also suspiciously increased. El Mundo newspaper tried but failed to prove that there was a connection, claiming his wealth had reached £5 million. About, I guess, when did it say it was? In 2000, so that would have been about $9 million. This is just a normal guy whose son happened to be disabled. He starts a federation, and all of a sudden he's a multimillionaire overnight. Martin, it said, owned a yacht, 8 cars, including a Porsche, 5 houses, and half a dozen large pieces of land. Maybe he's just really good with money.
Maybe.
Suspicious there. Yeah.
And what does he do for a living? Oh,
that's the thing. I couldn't find any information on that.
Aha.
It's like the whole.
So it's just the foundation.
Thing. Yeah, it's just a foundation. Give us your money. I swear, all of it goes to charity. Only 30% of it goes to charity. Vincente protested his innocence. Oh wait, hold on. Sorry. Vincente protested his innocence and then immediately resigned. When contacted by The Guardian, he angrily denied making money from disabled sports. It is very sad. There was no bad intent. There was no intent. You recruited people who weren't disabled, so that's not an intent. I should point out that the reason people cheat in the Olympics, and you think, why the fuck are you doing this? You don't get money. You're an amateur athlete. First of all, for the athletes, there's endorsement money, almost invariably in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. You know, even Kurt Angle basically essentially retired from life after his 1996 gold medal in wrestling. And then only by 1999 was he like, oh shit, I might have run out of money. Maybe I should come back and do this actual pro wrestling shit, and became the greatest rookie of all time, learning the trade in about 3 months, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Kurt Angle is a once in a lifetime. In terms of learning, he is a genius. He picks things up like that.
Wish I could do
freakish. That. Yeah. Physically,
I do. I just put him back down right away.
Yeah, just give up. But no, it's just not that guy. But yeah, so obviously to cheat, you know, you get endorsements, you get money for appearances, all of you get paid to open a supermarket, all of that shit. Yeah. But for the organizations behind the individual sports, so big one in the UK is rowing. Rowing for us netted dozens of gold medals over the years. Every gold medal is like an extra, I don't know, £250,000 from the UK government every year.
Oh wow!
So you get a gold medal, you get like another $250,000. Like, oh, you're doing well. We want this to continue. Here's more money. So if you are head of a federation that produces a lot of winners, you get a lot of money. And that money can do things like buy you a yacht and 5 houses and 8 cars and shitloads of land and stuff.
Gotcha.
So that's the for the non-athletes, that's the incentive to cheat or to help cover up the cheating. So he insisted before adding that he, as head of Innis FID, that had been too important to get involved in checking the credentials of individual players, washing his hands immediately.
I think that proves intent right there. If you can't be bothered to check and make sure.
Yeah, like we were talking about with your guy.
Yeah,
Mr. Tenet, like, oh, I just, I didn't check. It's like, that should be the basic part of your job. The fuck? The IPC.
One job.
Yeah, you literally have one fucking job. The IPC eventually set up its own investigation committee. It was only just this sport, exclaims the IPC media director Miriam Wilkins. It was just the Spanish team. No, it wasn't. We've just proven the Russians were in on it as well. What the fuck is wrong with you? What kind of investigation were you running? It definitely wasn't just that team. We know that there were swimmers and other people, track and field athletes. They're just like, oh, no. Honestly, we're all clean. Oh, isn't it an amazing inspiration? Look how inspiring everyone is. But all learning disabled athletes were banned until INASFID could come up with a way of making sure that there was no further cheating. Its proposals have at the time so far fallen short of what the IPC wanted. They couldn't find a way. They did eventually reinstate learning disabled athlete sports, but with far more stringent testing. Athletes have to take tests designed to be impossible to cheat. Okay. If your IQ, and they are like, I've tried a few of these IQ tests because you can do them online. You cannot game them. You cannot like, oh, I'll just get the wrong answer. it can tell when you're deliberately fucking the score up, right?
Right.
So the majority, like, intelligence is such a weird thing. First of all, IQ. Let's talk about IQ because that's how this is tested. IQ is completely fluid. People will say, "Oh, I know this person who's got an IQ of 130. They're a genius." Sure, only like 2% of people have an IQ over 110 in the world. And IQ is fluid. It changes with age. So when you're a kid, you have a low IQ. When you are a certain age, you've learned stuff, your IQ is higher. As you get older, your IQ drops because, your brain is going a little bit dribbling out your ears. It's just the way things work.
I'm essentially a 16-year-old again.
Yeah, basically. Apparently the biggest, it's interesting you say that, the biggest jump is from the age of 16 to 21. Like, IQ points can go up by as much as 10 to 15 points in that window alone, which is kind of amazing. But that's because that's the formulative, like, higher learning levels that you go through. So the test, these IQ tests that you can take now, if your IQ is above 75, you can't compete in learning disabled athletic competitions. And it is very difficult to cheat. One guy tried to cheat it multiple times. He ended up with a score of 25. And they were like, wow, it's not even close. Like, you can't game it. They are almost
I see
flawless.
how that works then.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So these have been designed by very high-level cognitive scientists and stuff to make sure that, you can't just like, oh, I'll just lie. But back to how this happened. The athletes for Spain's basketball team's tests in 2000 gave conflicting reports on how they cheated their tests. Some said they were never tested. They were just like, no, nothing ever happened.
Okay.
Some said that they had deliberately tested low on their tests, and others said that Spanish doctors forged their paperwork. I totally believe all of those, but it's amazing that there's like 3 different stories. But as usual, Carlos Ribogorda, the man who blew the whistle, had the inside line. He said that in the 5 months of training he had before with the entirely fake team, the only test he was subjected to, what do you think it was? This test to make sure he was learning disabled.
Gosh, I don't even know. Was it one of those like SATs tests? I don't know.
You would think so. You would think it would be a straightforward learning cognition test, something like that. The only test he had in 5 months of training with the entirely fake team was 6 push-ups and a blood pressure check.
Oh, I was going to say blood pressure. I don't even know why. Okay. I should have said it.
You would have been right.
See, I know how to do this.
That's it. 6 push-ups and a blood pressure check. Just 2 things. My 91-year-old grandmother could do both of those things.
How does that prove a learning disability?
I don't know. That's a complete joke. And when I heard that, I was like, that is incredible. How did the International Olympic Committee not know that something fishy was going on when you've got stuff like that happening in like Spain, or like it's probably happening in multiple countries, but we know for certain because this journalist is now blowing the whistle. Shocking. A lot of athletes around the world are devastated by that, says Nick Parr, chief executive of the English Sports Association for People with Learning Difficulties. This goes beyond disappointment. They have trouble understanding. There are English athletes who think that as they are being punished, they must have done something wrong. How heartbreaking is that? Fuck.
So, wait.
So all learning disabled athletes were banned from competing because of the actions of these Spanish people, because they couldn't test for it properly.
God,
it took
I hate
years
that.
to come up with this test.
Assholes got to ruin everything for everybody. I hate
that.
I hate when that
Thousands
happens.
Of it. Yeah, and some of these people, like, there are people out there, and I've never met anyone, but people who genuinely dream of going to the Olympics, that is the height of their life. And it's not like a dream that maybe evolves over time. Like, oh, when you're younger, you're like, oh, I just want to be a stuntman. Or like, I want to be a YouTuber, or whatever, or I want to be a famous TikToker. But then, like, you hit your late teens, early 20s, and you're like, I just want a good career in this field. And then you get to a certain age, like, oh, I'd really like to settle down now. Your dreams change, right? But if you're an Olympian, your dream is to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal. And after that, life is somewhat meaningless.
And it's a short window, too.
Yeah.
So
you have 10 years. really.
Yeah, when they shut it down to your entire group of people competing,
Yep,
that would suck.
exactly. And that's shocking because, you know, you can say, well, you know, it's not like the Olympic Games. You know, people compete in different categories for different ages, and that to a certain extent is true. I know some events like equestrian, like I think it was a 6-year-old won a gold medal. It's just it's not the same. You know, there's less funding available if these people aren't competing, so they're just not going to have the opportunity to go. It's shocking. So the Paralympics, however, is not the only international sports organization for learning disabled people. The International Olympic Committee has also given its backing to a separate games, the Special Olympics. So this article was written before that became a thing. The Special Olympics is not an elitist sports organization. People of all levels and abilities can compete, says Kirsten Suto, its spokeswoman in Washington. The philosophy is all about doing one's own personal best. In practical terms, that means dividing athletes into divisions so they compete against those of similar ability. If they improve, they can move up a division to compete against more capable athletes. We like the spirit of competition, but we don't focus on medal counts. Our country's doing best. We focus on individuals and their accomplishments, which I like. That should really be the heart of most competition. I think just personal best, really. Otherwise, you know, it can be quite ruinous when you come up against someone who is a once in a generation athlete. And you're like, I'm never going to beat this person,
right?
No matter how hard I try. That can be soul crushing.
Just the dude that is running against the one setting the world record.
Yeah, it's like shit. I'm just going to be in the background while this guy's hands are raised. You know, best I can ever hope for is silver. That must be soul-crushing. Anyway, the Sydney scandal provoked sadness, says Suto. We are always sad when people aren't true sportsmen and don't take sports seriously by faking and ridiculing it. And that's an interesting point. There is an element of ridicule here. You know, they thought it was easy to just get a bunch of people who normally compete in basketball games on the street and just get into compete in these games and we'll fake everything. It's fine. It's like that's really horrible. The Sydney Games also turned up 11 doping cases. That's really weird. Medals were taken away from, among others, the American runner Brian Frazier and the Azerbaijani powerlifter. Oh, I'm going to struggle here. Gundus Ismailov. Oh, that's not too bad. Ismailov had been taking both nandrolone and anabolic steroids. And
what's a nandrolone?
I know. And methandinone. Yeah, that's one. Just steroids. Let's go with steroids. That's the bad one. Frazier, billed as the world's fastest amputee. It's kind of that doesn't hit the ear quite right. That one had also been taking nandrolone. Jesus. At the Winter Olympics 2 years later in Salt Lake City, German skier Thomas Oilsner had to return 2 gold medals after a doping scandal. After the game, back to the Spanish team now, the team were disqualified in order to return the medals. In 2013, after over a decade of investigation and court battles, Fernando Martin Vicente was found guilty of fraud and forgery. He was fined €5,400, and that's it.
Well, it's more than 150.
That's true.
So he had to give that back.
$150. Got to give that money back. No didgeridoo money for you. And and also he was ordered to return the €150,000 he'd received from sports sponsorships due to the team's victory. That's the money, €150,000. And this is the scandal unfolded really quickly. They already got that money, like within a few days of winning their gold medals. Can you imagine what a following year of fame and fortune could have led to? You're talking big money for these people.
Yeah. Shit. Well, more yachts and
no 6th house for this arsehole. As for the 10 fake athletes, nothing. No charges or fines. They were just ordered to return their medals. During the medal ceremony, the athletes looked dour and muted. None of them wanted to talk about it with each other afterwards. They finally realized that they robbed real Paralympians of their chance to achieve their dreams. So after they won their medal, they were like, oh God, what have we done?
How did they not think of that beforehand?
I know. The lack of insight here. is staggering. These people didn't seem to care. They're like, oh, we're going to Australia. No, you are robbing people of rightly earned gold medals. And actually, it doesn't sound like the Russians deserved it either. The people they competed against in the finals, because they had 3 non-disabled athletes as well. But at least they had like 7 others who did have learning disabilities. There were only 2 people in the Spanish team that had learning disabilities,
and they weren't allowed.
Had no idea what was going on because they weren't allowed to train with their teammates.
Right? Yeah.
Jesus.
It's messed up.
Yeah, and that's all I got for you this week. I mean, it's a short one, but the thing that hit me about this was, I mean, the year 2000 is an interesting one because we're still at the kind of the boundary between analog and digital to a certain extent. You know, the internet is not widely available. It's certainly not widely used. Nobody's got it on their phone. You know, if you want to use the internet, you have to sit down on a big ass computer. If you're lucky, your laptop might have some sort of thing that you can hook up to, because wireless sure as shit isn't a thing. You essentially have to sit down at a big computer and read up about this. Newspapers, you know, celebration of a medal thing, that's going to be a day maybe, and no one's going to really check up on that after that. You might get news headlines for the day, and that's it. So really, they were hoping that they could fly under the radar with this shit, because they knew that once they won the gold medal and all those pictures were out, it just takes one person to be like, I know that guy. That's my mechanic. He is not disabled.
Right. Well, see, you know? And that's where I guess I'm still kind of left wondering. It's not necessarily learning disabled as in neurodivergent. Like, you can't have dyslexia or ADHD and go qualify, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I just also wanted to point out, this article's from 2004. I do apologize if some of the language in this is outdated. I couldn't find anything more current. The words like I can't even say it. Oh my god, neurodivergent weren't used at this point in time. And I just want to apologize if anyone was offended by the language I used in this, because it was taken from an article written in 2004. So yeah, there are now very stringent qualifications to get into the various Olympic bodies. But man, how did they think they could get away with this? Even in 2000.
Who is, none of them got busted for doping too, right? It wasn't like they didn't need to, and they doped, because that's just mean. That
would have been overkill. You know, you suddenly got like these huge guys ripped to shreds showing up to the Paralympic. I think that would have set off a few alarm bells. But like, I guess it's a part of me. So, and a lot of this is because, and there is an epidemic of this in society. It's something that isn't talked about too much. There's a term called inspiration porn. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
I have not.
So, okay. Don't like, if it turns up actual porn, don't look at that. But the phrase inspiration porn is essentially where people celebrate the most minor achievements of people who are otherwise abled or disabled or neurodivergent or have disabilities, whatever it might be, in such a way that it's like, it's kind of patronizing, and they're only doing that to make themselves feel better.
Okay.
You know, like and you can argue over what classifies as inspirational porn. Like, oh wow, this person put a thing up of them going to the park today, and isn't that amazing? It's like, no, it's just them going to the park. And like, I've had this before, like with the whole Crohn's thing. Like, oh my god, like, oh, that must be so terrible. You do occasionally get that. I just have to say, like, you adapt. Humans adapt, right? That's what we do. That's how we've evolved to become the dominant species on the planet. We adapt. It's our thing. So
some of us,
yeah, some. But I think a lot of this will have been like, people will have been unwilling to question it at the time, because they're worried about maybe getting fingers pointed. They're like, how dare you question?
Right. I can see that.
This athlete, you know?
Right.
But yeah.
Well, because when they questioned it back then, they wouldn't have said it nice.
No, it wouldn't have been well worded. Let's just put it that way. You know, the respect and standing of Paralympic athletes at the time, it wasn't really a thing. It didn't really get a huge amount of coverage, and certainly like there was a lot of really quite crass humor still existing around 2000s around people with disabilities. I mean, I still make crass jokes about my own disability, but I'm fucking allowed to. So yeah. What's your score for the 2000 Sydney Spanish Paralympic basketball team?
How long did they get learning disabled people banned from competing?
It was 2 Olympics after that, so 8 years.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Well, that raises it up a little bit, I think,
Doesn't
because
it?
I hate when people get shit taken away from everybody else by being assholes. So that raises that up too. And I think that it was a collective idea to.
Well, it was the brainchild of Vicente,
Okay.
but they recruited people who knew full well what was going on and did nothing except
were
for
just
this
cool
one
with it.
journalist. Yeah, they were complicit.
Okay.
But they weren't masterminds, as it were. But any one of them could have just gone up to someone in the Olympics, gone, "Hey, look, they pulled me off the street in Madrid. There is nothing wrong with me,"
Right.
And nobody did that. They didn't want. They were complicit, and they were probably terrified of upsetting this quite powerful person. So yeah, Vicente is the main architect of all this.
And he did that because his son was disabled.
Well, that's where it started,
All
but
right.
also it sounds like he's got quite the estate to keep up now. So
he got an idea from a bad situation and then ran with it and was an asshole and ruined a bunch of people's lives. So nobody really died. And it sucks though when you have something that you want really, really bad and then you lose opportunities to get it when there's already limited opportunities to get it.
Exactly. That's the big thing. This is one of the key pillars in like kind of the world of competition for any athlete. So and like disability athletics as it is, it doesn't get anywhere near the recognition and coverage that like what is considered mainstream athletic competitions do. So like you say, this is kind of the opportunity. And it was taken away from thousands of people for 8 years, and also the people at the games at the time who should have won and didn't because of these arseholes.
So, yeah, I think for all of that, I think an 88 is fair.
Thank you. I think that's, I completely agree. Again, like you said, nobody died. But I think there is something about, we talk about the Olympic spirit. Because I got to tell you, there is evidence that ancient Greeks were doping. They were eating goat testicles to give themselves a performance boost. Yeah, I know. It's a shit. Hey. It's a thing. Hey, whatever floats your boat, man. But, it was... I heard about it at the time, I think, and then it kind of left my consciousness and came up again recently. But I just don't understand what the end... we talk about the end game. The end game was funding. I don't understand how you thought you could get away with this. The arrogance to think that you could just fake this shit.
Right.
And nobody would notice. I mean, if it was one athlete, right? But 10 out of 12, no way, No. And also then, like, even one athlete, then people would have been like, hold on, that's a ringer. There's definitely someone in there who's, a professional or under the radar or whatever it is. But yeah, I felt really gross about this. And also, I said it was comical. It's so comical in that how the hell did you think this was going to work?
Right. Well,
dude,
I don't know. I guess maybe it's a crude, tasteless humor thing on my part too, but that reminds me of that Johnny Knoxville movie, The Ringer. Now that you said
bring that up, that was. I'm pretty certain that was entirely based off this event. Okay. It feels like it because this predates The Ringer by a few years, and that is a horrible film. It's terrible. It's like, Johnny
most of his stuff is pretty horrible anyway.
Yeah. It was of all the things Johnny Knoxville has done in his career, that's the one that I was like, not really interested in even watching that. But like the idea that it's a comedy where Johnny Knoxville pretends to have disabilities, like really quite serious learning disabilities, because he thinks, I can easily win a gold medal against these Paralympic athletes. They're disabled and I'm not, blah, blah. And then he tries and actually loses. And then has to come out and, he learns a lesson along the way that you shouldn't try and con people out of really important opportunities for them. It's like, this is not a funny film. This is kind of like, oh, this is really uncomfortable watching.
Yeah, it's kind of could have been like, this is what the best outcome that could have happened from this real life situation, but it didn't because they suck.
Yeah, and like the first game, they're 30 points up by half time, and the coach is like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" So
That sucks.
I know it's kind of crazy to stack the deck so heavily in your favor. There was always going to be someone that knew, and for it to break like this, it basically ended careers. So yeah, I do feel extremely sorry for the athletes that missed out on genuine competition as a result of the action of these 12 to 13 / potentially more, because who knows who was complicit on the organizational side. I mean, apparently doctors were, and apparently six push-ups and a fucking blood test is enough to get you on the team. But yeah.
Because they can tell that your blood pressure is different if you're learning disabled. You know.
Yeah, you must have learning difficulties. Your blood pressure's off by 3 points. What the fuck? That doesn't make any sense. So that was the Spanish men's Paralympic basketball team from the 2000 Sydney Olympic Games, who faked disabilities in a horrific and disgusting manner. And I also just I don't really know how to phrase conversations like this, because I am kind of ignorant of this world. So I apologize to anyone if I've offended anyone by saying, like, not using the correct term or correct phrases or anything like that. I do apologize, but I felt like this was an important thing to cover, because it's one of those situations in the world where someone thinks they're trying something that's foolproof, but if you take even a second to analyze it, you know it's not going to work.
Right.
So that's kind of the true benchmark of idiocy, that you can't see the fault in your own plan.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess this guy who owns a yacht and a bunch of houses, he's probably been getting away with schemes of some nature for a while now. So he's like, well, fuck it. Why can't I? You know?
Right. Yeah. He's I got away with it already. Why wouldn't I just keep getting away with it?
It's like Bill Burr says, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. It's like this guy who couldn't speak any English and said, I'm going to be the biggest bodybuilder in the world, comes over to America. Like, you've got to be out of your fucking mind. He does it. And then they're like, oh, what next, Arnold? Oh, I'm going to be the biggest action star of all time. There's no fucking way that's happening. You sound like an idiot. And then boom, he does it. He's the biggest action star of all time. Then what's next? I'm going to be the governor of California. No, you're fucking not. You have no political background whatsoever. Boom, he does it. It's like, and then Bill Burr jokes, why wouldn't he think that he could fuck his maid and get away with it? You know?
Right.
Because he'd gotten to that stage already where he's like, I am untouchable. So
he bought into that. If you visualize it,
if you visualize it, it happens. Sometimes if you visualize it, you might need to get glasses, to be honest, because you might be well off. So that's our episode for this week. Slightly short. We managed to make it over an hour and 20. There's me joking. Look at how much we talk. We like the talk.
Yep.
So we've got Tenet, the second worst thing with the name Tenet in it, behind that terrible film that came out a few years ago. You're not. Oh, this is you don't remember this? This was a release during lockdown. This is a Christopher Nolan film that sucks. Do you know how rare that is?
Okay.
It's called Tenet. It's got, oh Christ, Robert Pattinson in it, and it's like a story of it's like a James Bond thing, but time is going backwards and forwards at the same time, and there's like there's weird effects going on, and cars are rolling, and it's terrible. It's like, imagine if you took all the most confusing parts of what's that dream one that he did?
The
crazy
Matrix?
fucking Inception.
Oh, okay.
Take all the confusing parts of Inception and take out all the charisma of the actors and the interesting action scenes. That's Tenet, basically. It's just like, what the fuck is this?
I guess I'm glad I missed it.
Yeah, it's do not watch that film. It is bad. So George Tenet, the architect of really quite significant deaths in the world following and before the September the 11th attacks, and I have to read this every time. The Spanish men's Paralympic basketball team for the 2000 Sydney Paralympic Games, who 10 out of 12 of them did not have any disabilities whatsoever, and the coach knew it, and the person who put the team together knew it. So we have a 93 and an 88, another high-scoring episode. Derek, how did you find researching George Tenet for this one?
It was, God, there's so much on the guy. I I skipped over part of what I was going to put out there anyway, because there's so much.
I'm sure. He was so incompetent.
So incompetent. Exactly. Thank you.
He's so bad. There are pages. Like Wikipedia has to be expanded because of this one man's lunacy.
And I think that who played him in The Looming Tower? A Baldwin. Yeah.
Oh, one of the Baldwins.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it the one that accidentally shoots people, or is it the one that nobody remembers?
I think it was the one. I think it was Alec. Yeah.
Oh, poor Alec. Right.
Yeah.
He's not looking so good at the moment.
Yeah,
I do have to watch that, The Looming Tower. I have heard of that. And then you got this. I watched a video on it on YouTube. A lot of my inspiration comes from like kind of random interactions with online media. And I was just like, I kind of can't not cover this because I have to cover it. Because this is so stupid. This is one of the stupidest plans I've ever heard. It's such a high-profile event. You think you're going to game the system because you've been getting away with it in your own country for so long? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Take it international.
Yeah, it's going global. So that's our episode for this week. I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. We've had a couple of people in the chat. Thank you so much for dropping by. And Derek, would you like to say goodbye, please?
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much. Oh, I should do the call to action. I always forget the call to action. What's the matter with me? If you would like to follow us on Twitter, go to @GreatestIdiots on Twitter, and Instagram it's @HistoriesGreatestIdiots. And if you go to patreon.com/HistoriesGreatestIdiots, you can throw us some cash and help us support this wonderful podcast that's now well into 40 episodes deep. We're doing really good, and we're getting lots of plays, and we're hoping to make some moves that will possibly make it easier for us to kind of keep an eye on what's going on with our podcast, but we can't talk about that just yet. But I promise, as soon as we've made the move, we will dish the dirt on some of the interesting things we've had to deal with from this podcast that have nothing to do with us and everything to do with the people that are supposed to be helping us. Anyway, thank you guys so much, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Goodbye.